Welcome everybody to the Barrington Area Chamber of Commerce Women's BizNet Programming. We have a virtual program today with a wonderful speaker. Our topic is Perspective is Pivotal, and our speaker today is Reverend Dr. Zina Jacque. And Xena has been a pastor of the Community Church of Barrington since 2007. She received her doctorate in physical theology at Boston University, holds a Master of Divinity summa cum laude from Boston University, a Master's of Education from Columbia University, a Bachelor of Arts from Northwestern University. She has served on the staffs of multicultural urban and suburban churches, worked extensively in the areas of education, counseling, and support programs, and has participated in many workshops, forums, and special religious programs. Reverend Xena currently serves as a member of the Barrington Area Ministerial Association and is on the boards of directors for Journey Care Hospice, the Samaritan Counseling Center of the Northwest Suburbs, and the American Baptist Churches of Metro Chicago. So everybody, let's give Zina Jacque a very warm welcome.
Suzanne, the welcome has already been extended. I will tell a little bit about my coming to Barrington, but moments like this make me know how short-sighted my vision was back in 2007. So it is an honor and a privilege to be here today. And when I read BizNet's mission statement to gather professional women to inspire, enrich, empower, and benefit from the unique talents of extraordinary women, I was humbled. And what it made me do was to go back and think about the extraordinary women who have formed me. And it was such a lovely moment. And so if you've not done that, just to think about the top 3 women or 4 women that have formed you, because the exercise taught me something lovely. Therefore, my mom, who lost 4 children in utero trying to have her first. And in 1956, her first one was born, me, and there's another one. But I remember being a young adult and learning that story and talking to her about why she kept literally putting her life in jeopardy. And my mother said to me, I was meant to be a mother. I knew that. And my faith kept pulling me toward that. So I felt safe in this work of trying to bear this life. It was my faith that brought you forward, she said to me. And so I know that this woman who birthed me shaped me in many ways, but in part, she shaped me by the power of her faith. And in high school, I grew up in East Chicago, Indiana. So if you head around 94, when you cross the Indiana line, you got 4 exits to Klein Avenue, and that was my exit, still is my exit. But Mildred Ball, who is alive and kicking in Indianapolis, Indiana, was the first professional woman, Black woman that I knew. And Mrs. Ball, I was a cheerleader, this surprises no one. Mrs. Ball was our sponsor, and she required excellence. She required us to stand straight and to live straight. And she was that voice that had been where we wanted to go, to college and into the professional world. So I think about my standard of excellence coming from Mildred Ball. And then I went to seminary late. I graduated from seminary at 40. I started here at Community Church at the ripe young age of 50. And I had never seen a woman in a pulpit until I got to college. And her name was Brenda Piper Williams. And when I was in the midst of looking for this job, Brenda became pivotal. Her strength to break that glass ceiling and be a woman clergy, Karen knows what I'm talking about, was so profound for me. And again, I'll come back to Brenda in a moment. And then the 4th woman, she's not a woman, she's 19. Though I was married for 34 years to the love of my life, we could not have children. When I got married, I got a package deal. So I do have 2 children of my heart and 3 grandchildren. But my sister had a child, and that young woman is 19. Her name is Xena. And Xena shapes me as well, because I live before Xena in the way that I want her to see talents or gifts or values or failure recovered from. So Xena is my source of hope. And that hope, which to me means confident expectation, my hope is that she will see in me some of the things I saw in those other three women. So it's just a fabulous exercise to think about who has empowered you, who has enriched you, from whom have you benefited, or whom has inspired you. I said to Dr. Proctor in the chat, she is part of my inspiration. So if you've not done that exercise, I really would encourage you to. It's fabulous. But here's the thing about perspective. Perspective is our way of seeing something. It's just our way of regarding the world. That's our perspective. And how we see things makes all the difference in the world. Here's my story about Brenda Williams Piper. When I began to consider a job in the ministry, my husband and I had just moved back to Chicago, though Chicago is home for both of us. We had just moved back from a stint in Virginia. And I had a newly minted PhD. I had a stack of references from some not-for-profit work I had accomplished or done or engaged in Boston and in Virginia. And I was feeling remarkably ready. And back in this area, every single door was locked and bolted. I could not get an interview. I couldn't get an interview. I don't know how many resumes I sent out, well over 100. Could not get an interview. And ultimately, and I never wanted to be anybody's pastor. So ultimately, I resorted to this work of the clergy. And the only two interviews I could get for that were in Barrington and in Mount Prospect. I never imagined being a pastor as an African-American woman of a church like this one in this community. And when Mount Prospect, in the middle of the interview, broke out in a fight, because some of them were not comfortable with me and some of them were, and they dismissed me in the middle of the interview. So the only option I had left was an interview here in Barrington. And when they hired me, I was so angry, like, I just don't believe you, God. How dare you? I'm ready. And this is what you offer. And beloved, back in 2007, my amazing church had grown quite small. About 24 people were keeping this place going. I was so mad. And so I went to my college advisor, Dr. Brenda William Piper, and I sat in her office. She has passed away, but then she was a pastor in Evanston. I sat in Dr. Piper's office and I just banged on the table and lifted up my anger. And this woman yelled at me for 2 straight hours. And she said, because I was using language like, I have to take this job. I don't have any other options. I have to take this job. Brenda handed me my head and shifted that conversation from I have to because I have no other options to I get to. I get to because somebody has seen a gift or a talent. I get to because I have had this extraordinary education at Boston University. I get to because they, as a church, recognize they might need to try something different. I get to take this job. I'm a journaler. And I wrote down that story after I left Brenda's office with my head in my hand, but it still didn't make any sense to me. I know exactly where the journal is, but that beautiful language of the difference between I have to and I get to didn't resonate yet. And I came to Community Church, and I am grateful beyond language for these last 14 years, for what I've learned, for what I've shared in, for what I've experienced. And as I have begun imagining my departure from this church sometime in 2021, because 15 years in one place is probably enough, and they probably deserve new understanding and new perspective and new energy, 18 months ago, when those thoughts started rising up in my being and I started journaling again, literally that aqua blue journal from back in 2006, when the interview occurred, fell on my foot off my bookshelf at home. And I opened it, and what I had written back then was, have to is an obligation. Get to is an opportunity. Have to is a burden. Get to is a blessing. Have to is a duty. Get to is a door open to more. Have to is not my choice. Get to is, this is my choice and my chance. It's a matter of perspective. I can look at almost anything that I begin a sentence with have to. And if I am willing to push down a little below that, I can transform that have to into a get to. I have to wash dishes, but that's because I had food. I have to do my laundry, but that's because I'm not naked. I have to be the disciplinarian with my grandchildren, but that's because someone has trusted me with these children whom I get to shape. I have to exercise, but that's because I want this healthy body, and my body works. And even in a professional way, those are all personal, but in a professional way, I have to do this report. But that's because I have a job and somebody is waiting to hear my perspective. I have to struggle with difficult circumstances in my job because of interactions with other people that have not gone well, or because in this budget climate, we have to think about how we're going to spend scarce resources, or I have to struggle because I don't know when we should open as a congregation. We have an older congregation. I have to struggle with these things. I have sleepless nights, but I have to struggle because I'm in a position of influence and of power. And I struggle. I have to struggle because my mind works. My mind works. If my mind did not work, there would be no struggle. And even my dear sisters at a sort of national level, I have to watch the unfolding of disunity in our nation because we live in a nation where there is free expression. I have to watch opinions that I don't believe lifted high, because this is a democracy. I get to live in a democracy. I have to see candidates across a spectrum, but I get to vote. Almost every have to can get turned into a get to, but it's a matter of perspective. So every morning, my bedroom window faces east. And some of you know that my beloved, my one and only husband of 34 years passed away in October. And we knew it was coming. He was struggling with Alzheimer's. I put in the chat that BACC kept my husband alive and safe and joyful. And I am so grateful to Pam Pellizzari and Terry for what they provided in the Day Out program for my beloved. His ego was quite intact. And so they made him think he was a volunteer, right? And so I have to suffer through this period of decline, but I get to because I love this man. Every morning, even when Andre was in this, my beloved was in this period of decline, and I had to help him with activities of daily living that I'm sure, had he been in his right mind, would have just broken his spirit. Or I had to clean up after him after moments that would have embarrassed him. Every one of those became a get to, because this was my best friend and the love of my life. And so when I didn't want to, I would lay in bed realizing what I was about to have to get up to do. And I would make myself think about the blessing, not the burden, the chance, not the absence of choice. Perspective is pivotal, because there were mornings when I didn't have energy to do that, or he was engaged in ways that just made me nuts, that it was a have to. And I did whatever I did with a different energy, with a different approach. One day I screamed at this man. He and I didn't have 10 arguments in 34 years of marriage. And I screamed, and he looked at me like, what just happened to you? Because it was a have to. And when I could shift my perspective is pivotal. Now, I want to say, you've heard me say over and over that almost every have to can become a get to, but not everyone can. I am working through a denominational structure with women who are coming out of domestic violence and the sex trade. And a lot of them tell these stories about when they were in the midst of this, that they knew they had to get out of it, but they really didn't have the energy. They didn't have the support. And so they taught me that whenever I have to, when you in your heart and mind, when I in my heart and mind can't figure out how to turn that have to and a get to, it is a flashing stop sign that says you need support, you need allies. That even those horrendous have-tos can be transformed, but sometimes they cannot be transformed on their own. Whenever you are held trapped by, held bound by a have to, I have to quit smoking, for instance, or I have to deal with this hatred that I have for X. Whenever you're bound and you can't turn it to a get to, my dear sisters and brothers, that is a sign that it's now time to reach out for help, because there are ways to transform any have to, but we're not able to do them all by ourselves. I need the energy in front of me. I need the support of my community or whomever I would turn to. I need the wisdom of someone who's walked this path before me. That's what happened when I sat in Brenda's office and she yelled at me. I didn't know how to turn that have to take the only doggone job offer I had because I was so angry. I didn't know how to turn it into a get to until my sweet sister spoke into my spirit and showed me how I could, with her help, transform this. So today, I want you to think about those things that do bind you, that do hold you, that seem to trap you in a place that is burden, that is obligation, that is duty, that feels like you have no choice, all the have-tos, and begin to imagine what it would take to shift it to a get to. Because when we can get to that space, our energy changes. Our capacity to withstand changes. Our capacity to get to the other side changes. Our ability to see this as an opportunity to learn and to grow and to be stretched changes. And our learning from it changes. Because if I have to, I'm closed. All I'm trying to do is get through it. But if I get to, I am open to see what gifts, what blessings, what opportunities might come. So I've told you I'm a journaler. And my morning routine, particularly now that I have no responsibilities in the morning except to me. I have this much lovelier time, and the eastern sun rises to wake me up. And my first tact is to pray. And then my second tact is to think, what do I have to do today? And how can I shift that energy? And when I can't, and sometimes I can't, I think, who can I call? Who can I look to? Where can I find my encouragement to be able to add different energy to even this process? So what do you get to do today? What do you get to do that you can see as a choice or a blessing or an opportunity or an open door? What do you get to do that will challenge you, that will build you, that will strengthen you? And my final comment before we have some time for questions and answers is my mom, as I told you, had this difficult time having the two children she ultimately had. And my sister was an easier child to raise. I wasn't. I was never without questions. I was never without and being underfoot. I don't know that the woman had a moment alone from the time I could move to the time I moved away from her for the first time. And she would have these moments when my incessant talking, and she would stop and close her eyes and then open them again. And when she did that, anybody around her knew that that was her reset. I don't know that I had that language. Her sister, my aunt, was my go-to when I got in trouble, my Aunt Quincy. And I must have been about 13 one day when I asked my Aunt Quincy what my mom was doing. And my aunt, her older sister, said to her, she's reminding herself that she gets to be your mom. So if you ever see me close my eyes, more typically, I look off. I am reminding myself that I get to be in this difficult conversation because I can help make it better. I'm reminding myself that I get to plant seeds even if I don't ever see them grow. I am reminding myself that I get to be in this fight, this argument, because maybe I can bring something to it. I am reminded that I get to. And in those seconds that my mother would have closed her eyes or I look off, I seek for the universe, better known to me as the Holy Spirit, to come in and reset my gyroscope. So I see the gift of get to, as opposed to the challenge and the burden of have to. So what do you get to do today? What do you want to shift from a have to? And may you find energy and strength to do that each and every day. Suzanne, that's my thoughts. I think you are muted, my sister.
I have a couple of questions for you. First of all, so you said you have been in this position either 13 or 15 years, correct? Yes.
I am in my 15th year.
Okay, so having done that for 15 years and been ingrained in this community, what now is your perspective of what's ahead for you? And secondly, as a community, I'm sure there's a lot of us that feel, oh my gosh, we're losing such a powerful leader and resource in the community. What should our perspective be as we, I guess, open ourselves to something new?
So part of the reason I started with the 3 women and 1 young woman that inspire me is that I part of the reason, so let me do this a different way. There's a tree, I'm in the church, there's a tree outside, and every year the leaves hang on until the spring. I can see leaves on it right now. And those leaves won't fall until a new leaf comes and pushes it out. And I think we're kind of like, not just Barrington, but that we are like that as communities, that we hold on, and it's got to be the new that is ready to push it out. And I think as a community, we have to keep looking around us and see who the new is. who the new person is, who the new thought is, the new way of thinking, and really help that grow up. And if those leaves don't fall in another month, they are going to thwart the new from growing. So I don't want to be a leaf that holds on too long. I want to make room for the new. And yes, it's, new leaves are tender. They take a while before they're, the strong leaves, but that's okay, because the constant, nature is our best teacher. The constant sort of turnover and the newness that comes brings new life. For me, I am not altogether sure. I have the privilege of sitting on a board of directors of 17 continuing care retirement communities. They are across the nation. And I'm the vice president for strategy for that board. It's $1 billion business. And I am very interested in this age group. The average age of our residents is 82. It's called National Senior Campuses. You can look us up. We do not have any properties in Illinois. We had two, but we lost them in a bankruptcy in 2008. That story is long and ugly. But the two communities we used to have are Sedgebrook in Lincolnshire and Monarch Landing in Naperville. They used to be ours. They are not any longer. But I just was on the phone with the executive director from the Kansas facility. It's in Overland Park, Kansas today. And we were talking about how long people live, that the turnover in leadership there is hard because people live a long time. They are thriving in these communities. So how do we harness the wisdom of the encore years, which is what I call it? You only get an encore if you do the first part right. How do we gather that? And my task with them is to really do some work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very recently, as I sat via Zoom with a group of our residents in a community, which I will not name, a woman said to me through Zoom, look, I paid a lot of money to live here. I want to eat well, play well, go to sleep, and get up and do it all the next day. You're asking me to learn hard lessons that I didn't learn in my work life. I'm not sure I want to learn them now. 98% of our residents are white. So we got some work to do. And that will occupy some of my energy and my time. But I don't know what else God has in store. I will be 65 in October, and now I'm raring to go. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I love your reference to the encore years. And of course, many of our viewers today are in their early years, but some of us are definitely in our encore years. Well, Xena, as you can imagine, we wish you just tremendous luck and goodwill and positive perspective, I guess, moving forward. And this community is going to miss you, and I'm sure you'll be a big part of, what happens next. But I hope that you'll come back and visit us and keep us posted on what you're doing and all the amazing progress that you're making.
Well, this church turns 174 this year and 175 in 2022. And I've asked them if they would please, I don't need to do anything, but I would love to be back for that celebration. And it's not sure when I will leave yet. They are in the midst of searching for their next pastor. And as they move closer to that, I'll be able to move closer to a date certain for my, I have to wait till we can get back together so we can have a party.
Absolutely. Well, we hope to all be there then. Well, thank you all. Thank you so very much. Before we tie things up today, we just want to mention a couple of other important upcoming chamber events. As you know, every month we have tried to offer virtual opportunities, and moving forward, every time we're on the screen, if I could have a show of hands, and if you don't mind, you might want to go back to your gallery view so we can see everybody, but give me a show of hands of who is ready to come back and will come to an in-person event if it is offered. Can I see a show of hands? No, we will. So slowly but surely, we're seeing some individuals interested in that. And so, you know, our mission is to provide opportunities that meet the needs of our membership. So we will continue to do virtual events, and we will roll out some in-person events. So for the calendar in March, we will have a virtual coffee break on March 6th. We are going to do a midday meetup in person, and we're going to roll that out at the end of the month on Wednesday, March 31st, and that'll be at Remember Charlotte's. We also will have a cybersecurity virtual program that's available to the membership. A lot of this stuff is free, so make sure you look at the front page of our website. And for WBN, at the end of the month, we are going to do an in-person event upstairs at McGonagall's that will include lunch. And the theme is going to be creating your calm, and we'll have more details on that to come. So please continue to watch our information and check out the front page of our website for any upcoming events. We encourage you to participate. Thank you all for being part of the program today. And if you want to unmute for a second and us give a big round of applause to Xena and wish her the best of luck, let's just do that. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you, Xena.
It's a joy.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.